Ladies and gentlemen, dreamers, visionaries, builders of destiny. Let me ask you something powerful. What would change in your life if you acted every single day like you were building an empire? Not a business, not just a career, not a small dream, but an empire of greatness, of purpose, of legacy. You see, the difference between wishing and creating is how you show up. The empire builder doesn't wait for the perfect opportunity. They become the opportunity. They don't hope. They assume. They don't ask, can I do this? They affirm, this is already mine. If you were truly building an empire, you would walk differently. You'd speak differently. You'd treat time like gold. You'd stop entertaining small talk, small actions, and small thinking. The empire begins within. It's built brick by brick in your imagination. Each thought a stone, each emotion the mortar that holds it all together. So here's your challenge. Start acting as if your empire already exists. Feel the weight of that crown. Step into the shoes of the version of you that has already built it. Talk like them. Walk like them. Make decisions like them. When you feel unsure, ask yourself, would the ruler of an empire be afraid to make this move? Would they shrink to fit into the comfort of others? Would they wait for permission? Absolutely not. They would rise. They would lead. They would act as if the vision was already a reality. And by doing so, make it real. Because that's the truth of it. You don't become a king or queen, then act like one. You act like one first, and reality bends to match your belief. So stand tall. See it in your mind. Feel it in your heart. Move through your day as the sovereign of your destiny. You are not here to survive. You are here to reign. Go build your empire, not tomorrow, not someday, now. Before anything is ever seen in the physical world, it exists first in the unseen realm of imagination. The tallest skyscraper, the most intricate piece of technology, the most transformative idea, all began as formless concepts in the human mind. Imagination is not a fleeting dream or a playful escape from reality. It is the foundation upon which reality is built. What we dare to imagine, feel, and believe with conviction eventually takes form, structure, and solidity in the external world. Imagination is not limited by current circumstances, past failures, or future doubts. It exists in a timeless state, unhindered by logic or physical restriction. This is where true creation happens, not through effort alone, but through the conscious direction of thought and feeling toward a chosen end. When one understands this principle, the world no longer appears random or chaotic. Instead, it begins to reveal itself as a mirror, faithfully reflecting what has been impressed upon the inner mind. Every thought entertained with emotion leaves an imprint. Every image vividly imagined and every scene mentally rehearsed becomes a seed planted in the subconscious. Over time, and often through ways the logical mind cannot predict, these inner visions begin to organize circumstances, attract opportunities, and shift relationships, all to bring about the fulfillment of the imagined state. Reality in this way is not found. It is made. The person who understands the creative power of imagination no longer treats it as fantasy. They use it as a tool. They become intentional about the images they entertain. They rewrite the script of their lives by rewriting the story in their minds. If you are constantly imagining worst-case scenarios, arguments, loss, or rejection, then your life will shape itself to confirm those inner expectations. If instead you choose to imagine abundance, peace, confidence, and achievement, the world will begin to shift accordingly. The outer world does not initiate change, it responds to it. Most people imagine unconsciously. They replay scenes of failure. They dwell on regret. They rehearse painful conversations and anticipate being disappointed. Without realizing it, they are using imagination destructively. They are programming the subconscious mind with scripts they don't want to live out. But once you realize that imagination is the first stage of creation, everything changes. You become the architect, not the victim of your reality. It is through imagination that you assume new states of being. If you wish to be wealthy, healthy, confident, or loved, you must first imagine yourself as already being so. You must step into that reality with your mind. Feel what it would feel like. Speak like the version of you who already has it. Behave in alignment with that mental image. That is the act of claiming it as yours, and your reality will evolve to match your inner conviction. Imagination requires discipline. It is not wishful thinking. It is an active, conscious reprogramming of your inner world. You don't just randomly hope for better, you see better, you feel better, you become better within, and your outer life begins to reflect it back to you. The great builders of society, the thinkers, the artists, the innovators, they all held a vivid vision inside their minds long before anyone else could see it. They dared to trust what their inner senses showed them more than what their five senses reported. This is what separates creators from reactors. One builds from imagination, the other merely responds to what is already built. You are always imagining something. The question is, are you imagining on purpose? Or are you letting fear, doubt, and external noise hijack your creative power? Because whether you do it consciously or not, imagination is always at work. The life you're living now is the result of yesterday's thinking. The life you will live tomorrow is being drafted in the studio of your imagination today. At the core of creation lies an often overlooked force feeling. Not just fleeting emotion, not surface level sentiment, but deep, sustained inner feeling. It is this inner state that acts as the magnetic field pulling experiences, people, and circumstances into form. Thoughts alone do not shape reality. It is the feeling behind those thoughts that gives them life, charge, and direction. Feeling is not a byproduct of events, it is the blueprint from which events are born. Every idea entertained in the mind, when merged with a corresponding emotion, begins to impress itself upon the subconscious. The subconscious, indifferent to what is true or false, good or bad, simply receives the feeling, back thought, and sets out to make it real in the physical world. It does not judge, it does not filter. It accepts, and in that acceptance it creates. Therefore, to change external conditions, one must first change the feeling that fuels them. You may say, I want success. But if the feeling accompanying that desire is fear, desperation, or unworthiness, then the message you are truly sending is the opposite of success. The subconscious mind does not respond to the words, I want. It responds to the emotional vibration of lack. If your inner world is charged with feelings of being less than, forgotten, rejected, or anxious, then your life will reflect those dominant states back to you again and again. The outer world is not independent of you. It is a mirror of the feeling you consistently occupy. True transformation begins not with the doing, but with the being. To be wealthy, you must first feel wealthy. To be confident, you must feel confidence surging through you even if your circumstances seem to deny it. It is the feeling of the wish fulfilled that creates the path toward its physical expression. This feeling must become so familiar, so natural that the subconscious receives it as fact. And once it does, the world begins to shape itself accordingly. Most people wait for results before allowing themselves to feel success. But that approach reverses the process. It is not results that create the feeling. It is the feeling that creates results. When you feel abundant, life begins to arrange situations that reflect abundance. When you feel loved, you radiate an energy that draws love toward you. When you feel powerful, doors open, people respond, and you begin to act in ways that validate that inner power. This is not mere positive thinking. It is embodiment. It is saturation of the emotional body in the state you wish to realize. You cannot deceive your feeling. You may say all the right affirmations, visualize the grandest scenarios, but if underneath you are still clinging to worry, doubt, or a sense of unworthiness, then the results will continue to mirror those hidden emotional truths. Feeling must be claimed. It must be cultivated. It must be worn like a second skin until it becomes your natural response to life. This is not a one-time act, but a daily practice. A decision to assume the feeling of your chosen reality again and again. When you shift your feeling, you shift your identity. And when identity changes, action follows. People make new choices not because they are forcing themselves to, but because they feel like a different person. The feeling drives the behavior, and the behavior reinforces the feeling in a beautiful, powerful loop. This is how new realities are stabilized, not through struggle, but through inner alignment. The secret is not in chasing what you want, but in feeling it as already yours. The mind may argue, the senses may resist, but feeling overrides both. Feeling whispers to the subconscious, this is who I am, and the subconscious, unquestioning and faithful, moves mountains to prove it true. To live from the end is to occupy, internally and emotionally, the state of your fulfilled desire. It means assuming the result is already a fact, not hoping for it, not waiting for evidence, but feeling and thinking from the perspective of the outcome being real now. This mindset bypasses logic, ignores circumstance, and moves straight into creation. The end is not somewhere you reach, it is something you embody. When you live from the end, you are no longer chasing a goal, you are aligning with it. You begin to dress, speak, think, and act in harmony with that version of you who already has what you desire. This is not pretending, it is not self-delusion, it is creation at its most potent level. You are stepping into a future reality in advance, and by doing so, you pull it toward you. The subconscious mind cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is real. It accepts what you feel is true and reshapes your outer world accordingly. Most people live toward the end. They define themselves by what's missing. They say, one day I'll be successful. Eventually, I'll feel confident. Hopefully, I'll find love. But living from the end turns that around. Instead of striving, you assume the identity of the person who has already achieved it. That shift in identity changes your vibration. And vibration is what aligns you with matching experiences. To live from the end is to wake up in the morning already thankful, already fulfilled, already acting as if your desire is done. It requires you to release doubt and the need for physical proof. You are not reacting to the world, you are creating from within it. This inner certainty is not passive, it radiates. It influences your behavior, your tone, your energy. Others begin to respond differently to you, not knowing why, but sensing the shift in your presence. Every detail of your imagined end, how you feel, how you think, how you carry yourself, becomes a blueprint. When you dwell in that end state often enough, it becomes familiar. The unfamiliar becomes the known becomes the automatic, and the automatic becomes the real. You are no longer visualizing as a dreamer. You are embodying as a doer. You move from the vision being a distant fantasy to it being your emotional home. Living from the end also means letting go of the middle. You stop obsessing over how it will happen. The how is not your job, the what and the feeling of already having it are. When you hold the end state in mind and live from it, life orchestrates the necessary steps. Situations shift, people enter, opportunities arise, but it begins with you refusing to compromise your inner conviction for the sake of external appearances. This way of living demands discipline. It is easy to slip back into old identity patterns, to look at current results and believe they define you. But the one who lives from the end is not concerned with what is. They are loyal to what will be, as if it already exists. Their inner vision is stronger than external noise. They persist in the assumption of their desire fulfilled, not just once, but as a way of being. Living from the end collapses time. It removes waiting from the equation. It trains your body, your mind, and your energy to match the life you're choosing. You are not working to get something. You are working to maintain the frequency of already having it. That frequency influences every decision you make. You eat differently. You think differently. You walk through life as if the door is already open, because to you, assumption is not wishful thinking. It is not merely hoping that something might happen. Assumption is the quiet, powerful decision to accept something as already true, even in the absence of physical evidence. It is the internal declaration that what you desire is not coming. It has already arrived in consciousness. This act of mentally accepting a desired outcome as a present reality is what initiates its physical manifestation. The assumption becomes the seed. Nurtured with belief, feeling, and repetition, it eventually expresses itself in the outer world. Every creation begins with a belief. Before the action, before the result, before the achievement, there is a silent moment where one decides, this is who I am, or this is already mine. That moment is the point of conception. The world may see nothing. The senses may report nothing. But the inner world has changed. And because the outer world is always a reflection of the inner world, reality has no choice but to follow. The subconscious mind does not operate by logic. It responds to the impressions we give it through thought charged with emotion. The language of the subconscious is feeling. An assumption is the channel through which feeling enters. When you assume something and accept it as fact, your behavior begins to change. Your expectations shift. You notice things you would have previously ignored. You attract what aligns with the state you've accepted as your own. The world mirrors the assumption, not the desire. Assumption is a form of identity. When you assume a state, you are stepping into the identity of the person who already possesses what you desire. It's no longer about becoming rich, healthy, or confident. It's about assuming you already are. From that state, you think differently, speak differently, act differently. You no longer look for confirmation. You carry the energy of completion. This internal alignment sends out a signal that begins to reorder your environment. People respond differently. Opportunities emerge. Choices become clearer. The power of assumption lies in its quiet certainty. You don't need to force it. You don't need to prove it. You only need to persist in it. The assumption itself, consistently held, begins to override the previous conditioning stored in the subconscious. It becomes the new dominant pattern. This is not about forcing positivity or denying present circumstances. It's about recognizing that your current reality is just a reflection of past assumptions, and that you have the power to plant new ones. Every repeated thought, every internal conversation, every emotion you dwell in is reinforcing some kind of assumption. Most people assume unconsciously. They assume failure because of the past. They assume rejection because of old wounds. They assume limitation because that's what they've been taught. These assumptions may feel true, but they are not facts. They are patterns. And patterns can be changed. Deliberate assumption is the tool that breaks the cycle. When you take control of what you assume, you take control of your future. This requires awareness and discipline. You must become the guardian of your inner world. Choose to assume the best even when evidence suggests otherwise. Choose to assume that you are worthy, capable, chosen, powerful. Even when your current situation says the opposite. It's not denial, it's decision. Assumption is creative because it precedes action, and reality always conforms to sustained inner conviction. The world is not responding to what you want. It is responding to what you believe you already have. This belief, once assumed, becomes your foundation. From it, you make choices aligned with your vision. You move through life from a place of certainty, no longer needing signs to believe, because belief itself becomes the sign every moment. The outer world is showing you a mirror. Not a mirror of who you pretend to be or wish you were, but a perfect reflection of your dominant inner state. The people you attract, the events you experience, the opportunities that open or close, all of it corresponds to the emotional atmosphere you carry within. Life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. You are not just a participant in your reality, you are its source. This principle reveals itself in quiet, subtle ways. When your inner state is one of fear, you see reasons to be afraid. When you are anxious, the world appears chaotic. When you feel unworthy, you encounter rejection. Not because the world is cruel or random, but because it is simply echoing your inner experience. The vibration you hold in consciousness becomes the filter through which you interpret and attract reality. Change the filter, and the view must change as well. If you walk into a room expecting hostility, you'll subconsciously act in a way that invites it. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll find betrayal in even innocent gestures. But the moment you shift internally, believing instead that you are safe, valued, and deserving, the entire dynamic changes. People respond differently not because they have changed, but because your energy has. This is not magic, it is alignment. The outer world cannot offer you something you do not first claim internally. If you desire love, but feel unlovable, you'll sabotage or reject the very thing you crave. If you long for success but carry a state of lack, you'll repel opportunities without realizing it. Reality mirrors back the beliefs you hold as true. It is not concerned with what you say you want. It is governed by the emotional state you habitually occupy. This is why internal work is not optional. It is essential. You must become more interested in how you feel than in how things appear. Your emotions are not random. They are indicators of the state you are currently in. And since that state is what your world reflects, changing your feelings becomes the most powerful tool for changing your life. When you shift from scarcity to abundance, the world begins to reflect more to be grateful for. When you shift from insecurity to confidence, people start to notice and respond in kind. The world bends not to your words but to your emotional posture. The secret is not in trying to manipulate the outside. It is in mastering the inside. If you feel peace within, you begin to find harmony where there was once conflict. If you feel joy within, life begins to unfold with beauty. The world does not grant you peace. It reflects the peace you've already allowed yourself to feel. That inner feeling becomes the mold from which your experiences are shaped. This is why people who seem to have it all often say it began with a decision. They decided to feel worthy, to feel powerful, to feel abundant, long before the external world confirmed it. And in making that choice repeatedly, their external world eventually had no choice but to mirror it back. The reflection always follows the state. Nothing in your reality is fixed. What feels like a pattern, a cycle, or a trap is often the outer echo of an inner story you've told yourself over and over again. Shift the story, shift the feeling, and the mirror must adjust. The law is simple. The world cannot reflect what you do not project. Your environment is not in control of you. It is under the influence of your consciousness, whether you realize it or not. You cannot escape your inner state by running from situations or blaming circumstances. You take yourself everywhere you go. If your inner world is chaotic, you will find chaos. If your inner world is settled, the world begins to look and feel different without anything having to change except you. Persistence is not about force. It's not about pushing through pain or pretending things are fine when they aren't. True persistence is the unwavering commitment to hold a vision steady, even when everything in the outer world seems to contradict it. It is the refusal to let circumstance dictate identity. When you persist in a new belief, a new self-concept, a new assumption, no matter how impossible it may seem, you begin to reshape reality from the inside out. Circumstances are temporary. They are echoes of past thoughts, past emotions, and past beliefs. They carry no creative power in themselves. They are reflections, not causes. Yet most people treat circumstances as immovable facts. They allow their bank account, their relationships, their job title, their history to define what's possible. But persistence says otherwise. Persistence recognizes that what you see right now is just a snapshot of a former state. It does not determine what must come next unless you continue to give it your focus and emotional energy. The power lies in sustaining a vision beyond the evidence of the senses. It means choosing to feel wealthy while your bank account says otherwise, choosing to feel loved while you're still alone, choosing to feel free while you're still in limitation. This is not denial, it is creation. It is understanding that the seed of any new reality must be watered with belief and nurtured with feeling long before it breaks the surface of your experience. Persistence is the watering. Results are rarely instant. The space between assumption and manifestation can feel like resistance, like delay, like nothing is happening. But something is happening. The subconscious mind is reconfiguring. The inner world is shifting. Old patterns are being dissolved. The moment you choose a new identity, everything not aligned with that identity begins to fall away. But if you let the current conditions convince you otherwise, you revert. You abandon the state, and the world continues to reflect the old one. Persistence is the discipline of staying loyal to your vision in the face of opposition. It is refusing to be swayed by appearances. It is the quiet strength of knowing that the world has no choice but to conform to your sustained inner assumption. The key word is sustained. Anyone can imagine a better life for 5 minutes, but few hold the vision day after day, especially when doubt creeps in, when nothing appears to change, when the old reality tempts them back into fear or resignation. Persistence is what separates the dreamer from the creator. There is no failure in creation, only interruption. The only way something does not manifest is if you stop assuming it. If you drop the state, if you stop feeling it as real, the creative process halts. But when you return to it, again and again, you reignite the process. You are not required to be perfect. You are only required to persist. Every time you return to the desired state, you strengthen it. You teach your subconscious that this new state is home. Eventually, it accepts it as natural, and once it does, the world must reflect it. The more often you occupy the state, the less effort it takes. What once felt like a struggle becomes automatic. You no longer have to fight for the belief. It becomes who you are. This is the reward of persistence. The effort decreases because the identity solidifies, and from a solid identity, new behavior flows without resistance. You begin to think, speak, and act in ways that align with your desired reality. Not because you're forcing it, but because it feels normal. Circumstance will test you. It will tempt you to give up. It will try to convince you that nothing is changing. But circumstance has no power unless you believe in it more than your vision. It is a shadow of yesterday, not a prophecy of tomorrow. What shapes tomorrow is the state you occupy today, and your willingness to persist in it no matter what.